Hi, my name is Yana. I'm a modern Ajma. This is the mid-year freak out book tag. Did I say that right? I never say this right, but it's that tag that this time of year is wont to show on your Booktube feed. So I'll just throw some stats on the screen to show where I'm at as far as by the end of June, because I am really anal about being a stickler for no, mid-year doesn't occur at the beginning of June. Mid-year means like all of the books that I've read at the end of June. So that's what I'm going off of. And as you can see, I have many a selection to choose from to answer these questions in this tag. Personally, I try not to include any rereads. I do have some of the books read this year are rereads for me. I also try to really limit myself and just stick with one book per question. So straight off the bat with question number one, big one, best book that I read all year. And just like that, I'm gonna break my one rule. As you can see, I try to have like a pretty even 50-50 split between my fiction and nonfiction reads. I did a pretty good job this year so far. I don't think in previous years I did like a favorite fiction, favorite nonfiction, and I really just picked between the two. I'm so hard on myself, but this year I'm gonna be a little lenient, and I picked Limitarianism, The Case Against Extreme Wealth by Ingrid Robains as my best nonfic, and Butcher's Crossing by John Williams as my best fic pick. It's just the two books that stand out to me for better or worse, for whatever reason. These two books compelled me so. Limitarianism, I'm pretty sure I read like right at the beginning of the year in January, and then Butcher's Crossing I read like a month ago. So there's no time bias really. These are the two that just stick out for me, that have made a lasting impact on my brain, and I love them both. I think you should read them too. Number two, best sequel I've read so far. Hands down, in my June wrap up, I just talked about reading a bunch of these Williams-Sonoma Kitchen Library books that I very quickly accumulated over the month of June after reading a few of them, after finding them in the library. Instant love, but instantly regretted not being a human being alive in the 90s when these books were coming out, so that I could like own them, collect them as they were new, and have like my treasured collection as an old now. However, the nice thing about finding out about these books now is I can't imagine how much chanterelle mushrooms must have cost at the grocery store in the late 90s and the early aughts. But now I can find all of these ingredients very easily. So maybe it was for the best. Everything always works out. I mean, how cozy could you possibly get? Come on. The best of the basics, super nostalgic, little to none preamble for every recipe, full page color photo for every recipe contained on one page. Yeah, I love them. I never ask for like free books. I never beg for ARCs. This is the first time that I'm like manifesting on the internet. If anyone has any more of these that are like new or in like very good condition, feel free to send them my way. I also try not to be like super influencery in my life, but I'm gonna say it. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with these books. And if I can influence you, take a gander at these in your library. It's just such a refreshing change of pace from contemporary cookbooks. Yeah, I love them. I love them. Number three, what is a new release that I haven't read yet, but I want to? Ever since I saw Ryan talking about Luminous by Sylvia Park, I've been so hungry for it. It's only like a couple of weeks away from my Libby audio hold at the moment, as of this recording at least, and so I will very soon read Luminous by Sylvia Park. I love reading contemporary Korean and Korean American authors. Like right now, the current craze is K-pop Demon Hunters, which I absolutely love. I love to see the vast range of the Korean diaspora. Is that how you pronounce that word? I never know. Diaspora? I hear that it's smart. I hear that it's very thoughtful, very intentional. You know, just like K-pop Demon Hunters, maybe just a smidge in a different direction. Question 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I recently read Yellowface and Babel by R.F. Kuang and loved them both. So I'm really looking forward to the new one that's going to come out. What is it called? Catabasis? It looks very similar to Babel. I have no idea what Catabasis is going to be about. I did not read the synopsis. Just like how I didn't really read the synopsis for Babel, there was no hiding from the synopsis for Yellowface, but the cover for Catabasis looks a lot like Babel, and so I'm just gonna assume, and the size, like the page numbers, are also similar to Babel, so I am very much looking forward to that read whenever it comes out. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Like, I have no expectations other than a good time. Question 5, biggest disappointment. I was so looking forward to reading Villette by Charlotte Bronte. I had not like high expectations per se. It really was just like, I know I'm gonna love this. I'm such a classics girly. What's not to love? I love Jane Eyre. And then I just didn't feel really anything for Lucy Snow. I was left in the cold by the entire story as a whole. I talked about Villette in my June wrap-up video and basically said that maybe I just don't get Villette. Maybe Villette is just not for me. Maybe I am just somebody who doesn't particularly want to view women in the way that Charlotte Bronte portrays Lucy Snow, the heroine of Villette. And whatever the case may be, it's not necessarily that I disliked Villette. I genuinely don't feel that way about it. As always, this question for me is really more about myself. Like, I am disappointed in myself for not liking Villette more than I do. It's also so deceptive. Like, the Penguin cloth-bound edition is so sunny, it's so pretty, but the story is not at all sunny or pretty. Question number 6, biggest surprise. I was extremely surprised at how much I truly liked The 10 by E.A. Hanks, daughter of Tom, sister of Colin. This is such a niche genre. It's a travelogue memoir exploring personal identity. It's not like a celebrity book, even though she does talk about her father quite a bit. It is a memoir after all, and it is talking about how she grew up. She had a really shitty childhood and how that impacted her life, what her experience of her family background was like, and how that shaped the way that she thinks and the way that she moves throughout the world. And I found this to be so smart, so compelling, very well written. E.A. Hanks, you can immediately tell, is an extremely intelligent woman. This is her debut. I look forward to reading more from her in future. I wonder, like, which avenue she'll go, if she'll stick with nonfiction. This made me really crave a Tom Hanks memoir. I think Tom Hanks is a phenomenal writer, like egregiously so. That man is so good at everything that he puts his mind to, except marriage maybe. But just the stories that that man could tell in his memoir, I hungered to read that. Did you catch my stomach actually growling? But reading The 10 strongly makes me think that that's probably never going to happen because the shit is just too heavy. Either way, this book had me so excited to read, and I was very pleasantly surprised. Question number 7, favorite new author, either a debut or just new to me. So I broke my one rule again. I'm going to throw up 2 names once more. But this time I've categorized one is highbrow and one is lowbrow. And for the highbrow pick, it has to be Katie Kitamura. I read Audition. It's my first Katie Kitamura in June, so very recently, but like within the first couple pages, I immediately knew, like, whoa, who is this fabulous lady and where have I been not reading her, since the beginning. I was extremely impressed by Audition, extremely impressed just by Katie Kitamura's writing. I was saying in my wrap-up that reading Katie Kitamura feels like watching a Criterion Collection film. And then for my lowbrow pick, I read Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson back in February, And I think I said that Kevin Wilson is like the golden retriever of contemporary American writers, like somewhere on my Goodreads or like in one of my videos somewhere. And that's exactly how I feel about Kevin Wilson. All of Kevin Wilson's books I read Now Is Not the Time to Panic a couple months ago, and like that just as much. However, the cover for Nothing to See Here is wonderful. I look forward to reading the rest of Kevin Wilson's books. He loves to write about family dynamics. I love the way that he writes about family, about children. He's able to write about like dark, deep things in such a cozy way. He's just very warm. Not that that makes things lowbrow, but I hope you understand what I mean. Question number 8, newest fictional crush. I had to really sit and think about this one. Like, no answer came immediately to top of mind per se. And also, I just didn't really read too many like sexy books this year so far, at least in the first half of the year. Isn't that always like the worst part about this tag? You can only talk about January to June, and then like for the rest of the year there's nothing. There's no like juicy questions like these to respond to. But I did think of Agnes in Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I mean, come on, girlfriend has got her own catch-all. There is one spicy scene in here involving like apples a-tumblin'. Say no more. Question number 9, newest favorite character. I could choose violence and go with Juniper Song of Yellowface. I did genuinely like that character. I didn't like agree with Juniper Song, obviously. It really is R.F. Kuang's like characterization of this like bozo Karen character and the whole unreliable narrator without going into like being mean territory. So while I genuinely do enjoy Juniper Song, I have to say Laura Palfrey of Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont by Elizabeth Taylor. It's not so much like Mrs. Palfrey is a strong, robust character. You know, like just like Lucy Snow, neither Lucy nor Mrs. Palfrey are like strong, robust, individualistic, singular characters. I feel like that they're both average women, and what Charlotte Bronte and Elizabeth Taylor do in focusing on a character like Mrs. Palfrey, like Lucy Snow, is to show like how society treats women like these characters. But what I loved so much about Mrs. Palfrey is the way that Taylor just writes Mrs. Palfrey within the Claremont, which is like the hotel slash old folks home. Like Taylor paints the portrait of Mrs. Palfrey in the way that her whole life has shaped and looked and functioned within her society, and puts her at the end of her life where her options have narrowed even further, and Mrs. Palfrey makes do, still holds her integrity, and chooses to live the life that she genuinely wants. What's not to love about that? There's like a low-key traumatic scene in this book where someone is suggesting like the idea of having like a small little get together at their house where they wouldn't be able to afford like a huge banquet per se. They could have some like cheese. And that's a nice life, isn't it? And both Mrs. Palfrey and myself are just like aghast, like the audacity of that proposal. No, I really did enjoy Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont. If you haven't read this yet and you love like reading British women talking about British women, I highly recommend. Question number 10, book that made me cry, or the saddest book that I read this year. I mean, that has to go to Beloved by Toni Morrison. A choke cherry tree? Come on, ma'am. I've been steadily making my way through all of Toni Morrison's books since last year. Unfortunately, I only got to Beloved in the first half of this year. This is like the book that I've been dancing around all my life, all of my reading life. So happy that I finally read this. It is as good as everyone hypes it up to be. It is just as sad as everybody caveats to be. But as I say with every Toni Morrison is incredibly sad, incredibly heartbreaking. However, Morrison's writing is truly something to behold, absolute must read, not just for historical purposes, just important human purposes, but Toni Morrison, the way that she writes, her sentence structuring, her pacing, her syntax, all the technique involved in writing that I know nothing about personally, is so incredible, so skillful. I say this about every Toni Morrison book. While yes, it's sad, you're gonna be okay. It's beautiful. I've also been trying not to annotate anymore, but for Toni Morrison, I had to make an exception. This here Seth talked about safety with a hacksaw. Number 11, book that made me happy. I also had to kind of sit and think about this one too, because quite a lot of books made me happy this year for many different reasons, but I just thought that I would throw out the upstairs delicatessen on Eating, Reading About Eating, and Eating While Reading by Dwight Garner. This is one of those books where the writer cites and sources lots of other writers, and it's really more about like the writer's own personal reading life. Inevitably, the entire book becomes like a gigantic TBR list. I love those types of books. Sigrid Nunez also does that a lot. I love Sigrid Nunez. I love reading food books. I love when writers find a way to talk about food in an intelligent, cogent way. This is one of them. They're kind of hard to find. There are not too many of them, I don't think. And so finding this on the shelves of Barnes & Noble and then finding a Libby ebook copy first and ending up loving it to ultimately then just go back to buy the book. What a happy ending story, right? If you love food books, if you love food writing, I highly recommend reading this. Number 12, favorite book to film adaptation I saw this year. So speaking of Sigrid Nunez, I read What Are You Going Through like a year or two ago. I really love this book. I still can't quite pick my favorite between The Friend and this one. Sometimes I pick The Friend, sometimes I pick this one. It really just depends on my mood. Nevertheless, to say this is such a great book. And then sometime this year I watched the Pedro Almodovar film, The Room Next Door. All I knew about this film is that it stars one of my favorite actresses in the entire world, Tilda Swinton, and Julianne Moore, and both of them are just stylized so fabulously. Their lipstick colors were provided by Lisa Eldridge, who I also love. I have a lot of her lipsticks myself. Of course, it's an Almodovar film, so it looks fantastic. Of course, it's pretty wonky, both story and like performances. And the whole time I was just watching this going like, is this what a girls trip looks like for pussy hat wearing women? That's just how it came across. Perhaps that has more to do with casting than anything, but that was my overall takeaway. And then at the end credits, it says that it's a film adaptation of What Are You Going Through by Sigrid Nunez. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, it is. You know, that's the definition of a delightful surprise. I had no idea. Question number 13, favorite video I've made so far. So the thing about me and my channel is that this is purely for fun. This is a fun hobby that I do, that I tell myself, this is a fun hobby, this is a fun hobby, every single time I sit down to edit every single one of my videos since I started like 4 years ago. However, I am a busy mom. Finding the time to sit down to record and then edit and then upload regularly is a challenge and just unfortunately not my priority. I make these videos when I can. The only real rule I give myself is to upload a monthly wrap-up, this mid-year tag video, and like my favorite books of the year at the end of the year. And then anything else is like extraneous. It's all, you know, like a luck thing. I do have like several ideas of videos that I could make. It's really just a matter of like, I'm never alone. I'm never alone to be able to like record this without sounds of like my kid or my husband in the background or just like dogs barking. I just rather not record if that's the situation. So to me personally, all of my videos, I don't really care one way or the other about. To me, they're simply just the books that I read this month. Even if it was a bad month, even if it was a good month, it really, like, the feelings are neutral about the video itself. However, the few times that I'm able to put up a vlog video, and in this case this year I traveled to New York over spring break with my family. I also added my son's birthday party and like a couple other things that happened that was very like kid oriented. And my son loves watching my vlogs because, you know, it's got him in it and he likes to watch himself on screen. And so ultimately I never watch like any of my own videos except for my vlogs because I watched them with him. So I have to say that like I Love My Son video and the subsequent New York City haul video that I made, I do personally have fond feelings for. Question 14, the most beautiful book that I've bought or received so far this year. I mean, that has to be The Artist's Palette by Alexandra Lask. This is all about literally the palette of famous painters, mostly, I think all oil painting palettes of like obviously European artists. But I found this to be so insightful. Like it was a new way of thinking about painting and painting process and art history. Each artist, she'll have the painting palette and then the like an example of a painting of theirs. But the best part is like the proportional breakdown of the colors that they use in their palettes. If available, like, you know, photographs of their ephemera or of their studio space, and quotes from either like the artist themselves or people close to the artist. Yeah, this was really great and I am so happy I found this. I treasure this in my art book collection. And finally, number 15, what book do I still need to read by the end of the year? So this is where I'm doing my check-in. I'm participating in Ben Reads Good's Read Good Challenge. So far, I've nailed every single month's prompt. It's been a really nice way of going through the year with like making sure that there's a good variety of books read during the course of the month. Like I know that every month I try to read a piece of poetry. I try to read one of my Penguin Littles. I try to get in my challenge book and then just whatever other books, you know, like usually half of them are whatever library holds that I've got going on that have the time deadline. And then whatever else, like owned book that I have that is just compelling me for whatever reason to read that month while I track the challenge. On my Storygraph, it is a challenge done on Storygraph. I mostly look on my Hobonichi Han journal. I write down my Read Good challenge. I also started keeping track of books bought this year, and then I'll look through them and try to get through like the books that I recently purchased, not to mention all the books that I still currently own on my shelves unread. So for the rest of the year, really looking forward to continuing that process. And oh right, I forgot about my 25 for 25 challenge as well. I also have that too. So far, I have not made a very strong dent in this. Unfortunately, I DNF'd Anniversaries by Uwe Johnson. Some of these are also like double picking out of the Read Good challenge, so they will be read. However, I don't think that I'm going to have a perfect bullseye, but you know, I'm definitely going to be over 50% at least in this, so there's always that. So that's all I've got for you for this video today. At the beginning of summer, I thought, oh, I'm gonna have so much time on my hands now that school is out, and I don't know why I thought that. I don't know what I was thinking. It's not like there's the summer schedule, which is arguably a bigger beast than the school year schedule. It is what it is. But this was a nice mid-year checkup, catch-up, check-in. So far, I'm having a great reading year. Even though there was like a lull kind of in the beginning, just none of the books that I was reading were really hitting. But you know, now it is. I never do this, by the way, but I never talk about a book that I'm currently reading about. But I mentioned at the end of my June wrap-up video, I'm going to mention it now. I'm currently starting The Cazalet Chronicles by Elizabeth Jane Howard, and you guys, I can feel within my soul, this is a momentous time in my life. It's just one of those books, like the Neapolitan novels, like when I read Little Women when I was a little kid. Like, this is the first time I'm reading this. I'm going to remember this forever. This is just one of those books that have captured me body and soul, and I'm having so much fun getting to know all the characters in this big family, reading about all the mundane little details in their lives. I'm loving it. So at the moment, I'm having a great reading year. I'm having a great time in my reading life, and yeah, that's where I'm at. As always, thank you so much for watching. I shall endeavor to find little chunks of time, like right now, to record more videos. But you know, sometimes the need for actually just sitting down to read the books as opposed to recording about my thoughts on those books kind of take priority. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.